Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Friday, October 14th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Iowa game is in 8 days, the game against Michigan in 43 days. We are at exactly the halfway point of the Ohio State regular season. 6 games down, 6 games to go. It has largely been so far so good for the Buckeyes. Not perfect, but also undefeated, still squarely in the hunt for the Big Ten and national championships, which is, pretty much of all you can ask at this point of the year, I guess. But that halfway point seemed like a good time for a little bit of a midterm progress report. So we're going to go position by position and check in on the grades that the Buckeyes have earned and where they need to improve if they want to stand on a platform with a big trophy in Los Angeles in mid-January. My guest today is Devin Radcliffe. He is one of our X's and O's gurus at BuckeyeHuddle.com. If you have watched our post-game coverage, you already know that he really knows his stuff. But this is somehow, I realized right before we started recording, the first time I've ever had him on this show. So, Devin, thanks for being here.
My pleasure. I'm looking forward to it.
So I guess since this is your maiden voyage on the morning show, let's get you started by letting people know a little bit about your background in football. Why should anyone listen to what you have to say about football?
They absolutely should not listen to anything I have to say about football. And if they do, I suggest taking the exact opposite approach if they want to be successful at it. No, in all seriousness, I've been coaching ball since 2005. I've coached every position in some way, shape, or form on the defensive side of the ball. Throughout my career, I've coached defensive line, currently coaching linebackers. I've coached in the secondary. I've been obviously position coach starting my career out. Now I'm currently a defensive coordinator. I've been doing defensive coordinator at a couple different spots now since 2013. And I've been studying the game the entire way through.
All right, so here's what we're going to do today, since it sounds like you're qualified to discuss this sort of thing. So now we're going to move on with the rest of the show. We're going to go position by group, by position group. So I just want you to give me a grade, A plus through F. I'm guessing we shouldn't have any Fs based on the 6-0 record, but we'll see how it goes. Just based on how each group has performed so far this season. And then maybe 1 or 2 sentences of explanation. And, if there's something that really needs to improve, what that is. So, all right, we're going to start with one that I think is going to probably grade out at least okay. Give me a grade for the Ohio State quarterbacks.
That's the easy one to start with. You got to give CJ an A at this point. He hasn't, we talked about it on some of the post-game stuff. He's had a couple games where his numbers have not been the Xbox numbers that you expect from him. But, you're 6-0. You're taking care of the ball. You're winning ball games. You're putting up big numbers when they're there. Obviously coming off a 6-touchdown game. Turnovers, he's kind of have a turnover bug a little bit, if you want to consider that. He's thrown the pick each in the last 3 games, but he bounces back, responds well. So it's hard to give CJ Stroud anything more than I'll give an A-. Let's do that. So there's always room to improve a little bit more. But no, he's definitely a player so far this season.
All right, boy, the Heisman finalist, and we're maybe not sure if he's getting an A or not. Jim Knowles talks about himself as a tough grader. I don't know. These defensive coordinators, maybe tough graders. I guess we'll see how it goes the rest of the way.
Always room for improvement.
There is always room for improvement. Yeah, and that has also been one of those things that we heard about from the coaches earlier in the week. Next up, a position where there has been, the quarterback room has really just been C.J. Stroud and then some other guys in garbage time. The running back room has been a little more spreading around of carries and the snaps for those guys. How would you grade out the running back unit on the whole so far this season?
Running back unit as a whole, I'm going to go ahead and give them a solid B. Obviously, Williams, and Henderson have good, and even the freshman, the true freshman Hayden, when he comes in there, they're putting up good numbers, run the ball hard. But when you go back and start watching some of the film, Ross, Justin, and I talk about it some. We get lost in Twitter and whatnot. There's still some cuts. They're still leaving some yards out there. Still missing some reads at the second level that could turn. We're complaining about a profit here, which is something you talk about coaching. Everyone complain about profit, but if you're reading the backer right and you cut left instead of right, you cut right and you get 6. You cut left and maybe 60. When they start really seeing it hitting that next level, like you saw Williams 2 weeks ago, making that one cut and gone. That's when you're really going to take the production to the next level.
All right, next up, the unit I think is sort of universally recognized as by far and away the best of any unit, at its position in the whole country, but one that has been playing without maybe the guy considered the biggest threat to continue to rewrite the Ohio State record books before the season. Jackson Smith-Njigba basically hasn't played this year. So without him and without Cam Babb and with, other guys kind of having to shuffle around to fill those spots, how would you grade out the Ohio State wide receivers so far this year?
Again, we're talking an A unit for sure. Production's through the charts, off the charts, excuse me. You see Emeka is putting up huge numbers, even though he's not quite getting the publicity it seems like that Harrison Jr. is. Fleming's having a great year. If this is one of those things where, if any of those guys were on any other team as their only guy, they'd be talking about that guy as the postseason, award for this or award for that. But they're all on Ohio State, and they're all putting up career top wide receiver numbers, and they're just all having the same team. And like you mentioned, Smith-Njigba hasn't basically played it all this year even, so they still got to look forward to him coming back. But the biggest thing I like, and they showed it in the game on this past Saturday, was how these guys block and how physical they are on the run game. We just talked about running backs, but you're going to bring runs. It's because of downfield blocking and the way these guys get it after it and the stuff they do away from the ball, which I think is what really separates them as a unit.
All right. Next up, a unit that we probably would have had to grade incomplete in most of the last 20 years, but definitely I think has earned a grade this year, the tight ends. How are you grading out the tight end unit so far?
Again, it goes back to me running the ball. I mean, they're running the ball well, so let's start there. Obviously, they're winning at the line of scrimmage. That was obviously a position of concern coming into the season because you only had one, almost you could say half a guy back, because Cade Stover was a linebacker at the end of last year, and coming into the beginning of this year, he thought he was going to be the linebacker, defense side of the ball, playing linebacker, switches back to tight end, reclaims the starting spot, but he definitely brings a physical presence. He's definitely a maniac blocking on the edge. And then the pass games where we really saw him explode, where it seems like he catches everything that comes his way, plays with a reckless abandonment, going for the ball. We saw him take some shots coming across the middle of the Wisconsin game and made big plays, obviously. I guess we could throw Mitch Rossi in there might as well call him a fullback. I guess this was since the 20th anniversary of the 2002 team, and Coach Tressel, Brian Day chose honor and brought the fullback back and is handing him the ball, throwing it to him. So that's another element added to the offense that teams have to prepare for. And Gee Scott Jr. coming on there, caught his first touchdown pass of his career this past week. So as a unit, they're definitely a solid B, pushing B plus, A minus, grade for the season so far.
Well, you've talked a couple times already about the fact they've really been able to run the ball pretty well. So I'm going to guess the offensive line is going to grade out pretty well in addition. And, C.J. Stroud has not been running for his life very much. So how does the offensive line grade out to you at the halfway point of the season?
It's the old saying, it's a cliche because it's true. Games won and lost on line of scrimmage. And Ohio State's offensive line is definitely retooled, revamped. They're playing as good as anybody in the country. You wouldn't be putting up the numbers that Ohio State is on the offensive side of the ball, both through the air or on the ground, if it wasn't for at least a solid offensive line. But, they're moving people off the ball. They're creating these rush lanes so the linebacker can get the running back gets second level opportunity to make that play and bust the big plays. Stroud's getting the protection, get these pass plays off so the wide receivers can put the big numbers up. So definitely got to give them a B plus, A minus range for sure.
All right, yeah, Ohio State number one in the country in points per game right now, 48.8 if I remember correctly, and I think number one in offense in SP plus. So yeah, I don't think they need to be. That offense probably does not need to be graded on a curve. They're doing just fine all by themselves.
You can't put up the numbers they're putting up without really strong offensive line play. That's for sure.
Yeah, Ohio State's offense has really been kind of wrecking the curve, I think, for the rest of the country. Defensive side of the ball, not too bad as well. I think they were 8th in the country in SP plus on defense overall. Again, that sort of starts up front with the defensive line. We have seen, what struck me last week was how many different guys were involved in, sort of wreaking havoc in the backfield. How do you grade out the defensive line on the whole so far?
I'll tell you what, the defensive line, my pedigree, obviously, as we talked about at the beginning of the show, my background is, on the defense side of the ball, and I cut my teeth as a defensive line coach. So that's a unit I always pay the closest attention to. And, kind of segueing over from offensive line, games won and lost in the trenches. If you want to go back and look at the plays with Ohio State defense over the past couple of years really struggled, it really was up front. So I really had my eyes on the defensive line to see what they would look like especially with a defensive coordinator like Jim Knowles coming in, a totally different style of defensive line play than Larry Johnson has been accustomed to. Really, you can go back to his days at Penn State where his defensive linemen more or less were they kind of use a little bit of hyperbole. They were the guys get up the field. We're going to rush the passer. We are going to be the tackle for losses. We are going to be the guys getting the sacks. To a Jim Knowles, which is we are going to squeeze blocks. We're going to knock guys back. We're going to run through blockers. And if we happen to make the tackle, that's going to be just icing on the cake. But our job is to really wreck and destroy the blocking scheme. You heard, Larry Johnson talk about at the beginning of the year, block destruction. That was their big theme. I think he even said it this week, talking about how much time the defensive line spent even doing sled work, just to really ingrain that in their defensive line play, new style of play. So, long-winded way to get back to the grades. They're probably my most improved unit from last year. I'm going to give them B plus A minus. Obviously, I see the production when the opportunity comes for them to make those. When Knowles dials it up for them to go make and be the playmaker, if you will, to get those sacks. You want to see them finish, but especially the defensive end spot, which they've talked about. But these guys are getting pressure. You saw it. You saw it in the game. They were getting tackled the entire game, and basically the referees were all right, we're going to not flagging this just so that Michigan State makes it out of here with everybody they came with. Defensive tackles, Michael Jr.'s obviously been stealing the spotlight this week, 7 plays and was involved in 4 sacks. I mean, that's just an incredible production. Again, it goes to your point of they're just rotating guys in and out, and you just see them all playing with their hair on fire. They obviously bought into this, hey, less reps is more because they're going to count, they're going to be quality. You're going to have 100% to just go and wreck shop when you're in there. You look at the Leo position, they got 4 different guys rotating through there, and they're not missing a beat. So definitely A minus, most improved. And again, they start really cranking it up when they start finishing those plays, and you'll start seeing the sacks numbers that everyone's been accustomed to go through the roof here in the second half of the season would be my guess.
All right, another place where I think most people would agree that Ohio State has been improved over last year was the linebacker position. And, Jim Knowles, not only the defensive coordinator, also the linebacker coach. So that probably makes a little bit of sense there. They are rotating like crazy on the defensive line. They're not rotating as much at linebacker. You've seen Cody Simon out there and you've seen other guys out there, but really it has been the Tommy Eichenberg and Steel Chambers show for the most part during the first half of the season. How do you grade out that linebacker unit?
You know what? We talk about, you want to praise the running backs, we talk about the offensive production. Linebacker production is a direct result of how well the defensive line playing. You turn on the film from last year, those linebackers last year, they were just fighting through traffic. Offensive line getting the second level, and they're just hoping to jump on a guy's back as they're running by. This year, they're clean. You heard Eichenberg talk about, I think, last week, just how clean he is running the ball. He takes on, I think, it was either Eichenberg or Chambers said, I take on a guard about 3 times a game. They're just clean. They're running the ball. They're finishing when they get there. You want to talk about tackle for loss and sack numbers. Well, that's coming because the defensive line's making the mess, but the linebackers are clean to go clean it up. And they're another one. They're playing definitely. I'm almost going to give them an A, especially for how far they come from last year. Defensive line was most improved, but linebackers close, not far behind it. But these guys' production has been through the roof so far this year.
All right, and we talked about the wide receivers playing mostly without their, one of their, if not their best player in Jackson Smith-Njigba. The cornerbacks at times have been without, arguably the top 3 guys who, we would have expected to be the top 3 guys at least coming out of spring ball. Denzel Burke has missed time. Cam Brown has missed time. Jordan Hancock has yet to step on the field. And, as of earlier this week, they were talking about he's sort of in the process of maybe working his way back into, and maybe you see him from Iowa, but that wasn't a guarantee, and not someone who you're going to see probably getting a ton of reps because he's been out for so long. So they really just kind of had to scratch and claw and put stuff together, just sort of scrape stuff together. How do you grade out the cornerback room that has had to just kind of mix and match and just play whatever two to 3 guys are healthy in a given week?
So cornerback play, you only get noticed for 1 or 2 reasons when you're playing cornerback. Basically, you either just made a phenomenal play, interception, pass breakup, etc., or you just got burnt. So I don't think the corners are necessarily playing as bad I won't say bad, but they're not necessarily deserving of the criticism they seem to be getting so far this year. They got young cats in there. Burke's basically, you got Brown, who was starter for the first time last year, was a rotating guy, even though he's a vet with some experience. Even going back to 2019 under Halfley, he rotated some then. Burke's a second-year starter, but he's a true sophomore. So, they're definitely in the B range. You like to see them start making those plays when they're positioned to make them, take that next step and finish. But they're in great spots. You don't see guys running wide open. I think that's the biggest thing is they're there to contest. If a guy does make a catch, they're putting him on the ground. You're not seeing these huge chunk plays where someone's wide open and you have no idea where it happened for the most part. The corners are in position. They just got to take that next step, get the head around, get their hands through, and finish and start knocking those balls down.
All right. Now, Jim Knowles talked about this being a safety-driven defense. So if the defense is good, I assume that means the safeties must be doing at least okay, right? So what's the grade for the safeties this year?
I'll tell you, that was a unit that, you want to talk about carrying the load, safety-driven defense. These guys handling basically all the adjustments on the defense. The front six, even though they show some different looks, they're pretty locked in. They're pretty static. They know they're going to be in the run fit. These secondary guys, they're the ones handling all the adjustment on the back end, from coverage to who's going to be extra guy in the box, who's setting the edge, who's got, we just went from trips to twins, who's going to, be the guy to adjust and carry over to change the strength motion. So there's a lot on them mentally, even before the ball is snapped, to lead the defense. So that being said, post-snap production's been really strong. I mean, Hickman's having a great year playing that adjuster position. They got him playing on the roof. They got him playing down in the box. You see Proctor playing down in the box, they almost play him like a pseudo Sam linebacker when he's playing. You got Ransom, looks like he could be another Hickman that can play the third level on the roof. You rotate him down in the box. You saw him make a heck of a play, breaking up a big pass play. Well, would have been a big pass play just this past weekend. Obviously, had the huge Notre Dame game. And then the guy, he's almost like a corner. The way he used him, the transfer from Oklahoma State, McAllister. He's one of those guys. He only gets noticed for one or two reasons, and it's making plays right now, and hopefully carries it through the season. So this is definitely a A-type unit for sure for the defense, especially with the load that they're going to have to carry for the defense to be successful.
All right, so I talked earlier about the offense being number 1 in SP+, and the defense being number 8 in SP+. All right, we get to talk about the special teams. The special teams are 93rd in the nation in SP+. And, there's some weird stuff that goes into that. They haven't had a lot of kick returns. They had the one fumble on the punt. So, this probably isn't the 93rd best special teams unit in the country, but they also haven't been, massively productive. You haven't had a punt block for, a real game-changing play off the special teams necessarily. How do you grade them out so far this season?
I have to think about what they've done on special teams this year. I say that half jokingly. We saw the stat just this past Saturday. In the red zone, they've kicked, 2 field goals or 3 field goals this year. So the field goal unit hasn't even been on the field. I don't think they missed an extra point. How often are they punting a game? I don't even know the numbers on that. So like you just said, the numbers just even aren't there to really evaluate them. So what you like to see is that when they are called upon, they execute. And I think other than was a muff kick return against Toledo, maybe? I'm thinking off the top of my head.
Yeah, they had a punt that hit someone. I think a punt hit someone on the coverage team, and then there was the muffed punt against Rutgers by Abuka.
That's right. Yeah, that's correct. Yep. So really, there's just a whole lot of opportunities. So I guess you got to give them an incomplete for the season right now because there's just enough data to assess how really good they are. Hopefully field goal unit gets really bored. Same with the punt unit. And the only thing you hear is extra point and kickoff. And as long as they keep that going, things will take care of themselves.
All right, we're going to finish up with this. We got two sentences here I need you to finish. The first one is, if Ohio State wins the national championship, it will be because of their...
I'm going to say it. I'm going to say defense. It's because of Jim Knowles and what he brought to Ohio State on the defensive side of the ball.
All right, and if Ohio State has a disappointing end of the season, and you can define that however you want, is that a loss to Michigan? Is that a loss in the playoff semifinal? Is that a loss in the national championship? Whatever, however you want to define that. If Ohio State has a disappointing end of the season, it will be because of...
I will say defense again. And that, if they're really going to make a run at this thing, it's going to be because they have a really good defense. I mean, all you got to do is look at national champions far back as I can go. The defense is always pretty stout. Whoever the national champion is, offense is going to be a given. You take it for granted, but every year Ryan Day's been here, the offense has been productive and put up points. But can the defense really rise to the occasion and be as good as we think it could be and live up to expectations? I think LSU in 2019, when they lost on the national championship, their defense was still, even though it wasn't a great defense, it was still a top 30 defense, if I'm not mistaken. So if Jim Knowles can really keep this thing going in the direction it's headed right now, that'll be what puts Ohio State over the edge this year.
Yeah, and I'm sure people at home are going, oh, sure, the defensive guy thinks it's all about the defense. Well, I mean, look at 2020, look at 2021. Why did Ohio State not get to where they needed to? The offense has been pretty consistently good for the most part. And, if you're going 500 every time you don't score 30 points, that's not necessarily and that is the stat in Ryan Day's tenure. They are 35-0 at this point, or 36-0 when they score more than 30 points, and 4-4 when they score less than 30 points. So that tells you the defense needs them to score 30 points. So it really might come down to the defense. So
there's a reason why they went out and spent, what was it, $3 million plus or $2 million on Knowles, and however much the assistants cost. I mean, there's a reason for it.
Yep, and and they have some big money games coming up where I think Knowles was $1.9 million, but Perry Eliano, Tim Walton, that is that was an investment, and Ryan Day knows he needs a defense, and Ryan Day certainly seems to have a defense this year, which is good news for Ryan Day and good news for Ohio State fans as well. So, Devin, thank you for being here. And if you enjoy hearing Devin talk about football, the best place to do that is at BuckeyeHuddle.com. He is on our Huddle board. There's a whole thread that's just an X's and O's thread, and it's Ross Fulton, Justin Whitlatch, and Devin answering user questions about all sorts of schematic stuff. Where Devin is also on a lot of our post game shows at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. Those are always a lot of fun, and we get kind of a good cross section of our Buckeye Huddle staff, where you got Mark, who does recruiting, and Devin or Justin, who does the X's and O's piece, and then Tony, Kevin, and I covering the team and doing the press conferences and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of the full Ohio State football experience, all at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. And of course, BuckeyeHuddle.com. Sign up to become a member today. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.